Recession Rx, your prescription for getting through these tough times.
Hi, I'm your host, Kathy Hansen, and in this Recession Rx, we're going to give you the bottom line on bankruptcy, as well as the latest scams. We're also going to introduce you to some great deals for locals. But first up, foreclosures are skyrocketing with as many as 17,000 new homes in foreclosure. That's a 20% increase from the end of last year. And it's leaving many neighborhoods all but deserted.
This is a new problem for our communities all across the country. Police departments are struggling to find the best way to handle it so that our neighborhoods don't suffer more than they already are suffering.
And neighbors are struggling to understand why we're seeing houses like these. It's hard to imagine anyone ever lived here. The house is in shambles, the smell indescribable, garbage and debris in every room, and everything that's not bolted down has been stripped, including all the copper wires sold for cash. Why is this happening?
Not only like the house we saw where there was no wiring in the house, so you don't know what you're getting, but people who've removed like toilets and things and poured concrete down drains, and they're very upset. This is their home, and they're having to leave, and they're not very happy about it.
And it's not just homes in so-called bad neighborhoods that are being stripped. This home in Seven Hills is a multi-million-dollar castle. It's missing its front door, and more. Many of the appliances are gone.
I've seen a house with no doorknobs, no cabinet doors, no appliances, no water heater.
It's not just the insides that are a problem. The outsides also tell a tale of neighborhoods abandoned, many of them in the middle of the night, leaving them open to strangers moving in.
People are in a really bad way, and if they find themselves kicked out of one home or foreclosed upon, they have a family to care for. If they're not able to readily rent something else, or it's so traumatic, or they have a lot of stuff to move and they can't go far, they may very well find a home very near them that they can kind of maybe break into and live in until they're discovered again.
Metro's Kathy Perkins says abandoned neighborhoods also attract crime. Whether it's vagrants looking to steal what's ever left in a house, or teenagers looking for a place to ditch school. So how can you tell if a house is abandoned?
So if you're wondering if this house in your neighborhood is vacant, there's a couple things you can do. Watch it for a few days and see if anybody comes and goes. If it's completely void of activity, then perhaps it is empty. If you can safely look in a window and see, is there furniture, does it look like people have moved out, that's a first clue. If it looks like people are coming in late at night and they're going in through backside gates, or they're opening up a garage and entering that way, it could be a vacant house that somebody has discovered and they're now using. If the power box indicates that there's no power, because there will be a lock on it saying there's no power to this address, then you know that nobody's legally responsible for that home right now.
Perkins advises homeowners to start a neighborhood watch so you can pinpoint which homes are occupied and which ones are abandoned. As for homeowners who are trashing their homes before leaving, realtors have come up with a plan that's cutting down on property damage. It's called Cash for Keys.
You actually have the bank come in and inspect your property. They give you cash. You give them your keys. And the bank is then ensured that your home's not going to be pilfered by you.
Perkins says you can call 311 if you have information on vagrants or kids in empty houses. In the weeks to come, we'll show you what the city and county are doing to tackle the problem. The added pressure of increased mortgages, coupled with unemployment, has many Las Vegans and small business owners considering bankruptcy. Nevada has one of the highest numbers of bankruptcies, with an increase of 71% over last year. More than 18,000 people have filed for bankruptcy. And look at that, that compares to the national average of 31%. One of the reasons we're talking about bankruptcy is that there's so many misconceptions about it. People say they're getting conflicting information. In fact, one of our viewers says he had a difficult time getting straight answers for his clients on bankruptcy.
People are busy, You know, it's not, you know, a lot of people nowadays, you need to have 2 jobs, you know, you have kids, you have things that you have to, you know, worry about. And sometimes the last thing you really want to worry about is having to do a first, second, third consultation or going to other places for the proper information that you need. So yeah, I really think it would be really useful for users to have like a go-to place for all the information.
And joining me at the table is an attorney who teaches bankruptcy classes for the Legal Aid Center, Christina Jazarian. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Let me ask you, there's 2 types of bankruptcy, as I understand it, for consumers, Chapter 7 and 13.
That's right.
What's the difference?
A Chapter 7 is a liquidation of assets, and a Chapter 13 is a reorganization of a payment plan for your current debts.
Now, the one question I get a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is does filing Chapter 7 save my house from foreclosure?
With respect to Chapter 7, it will not save your home from foreclosure unless you're able to keep your payments current, or at least make arrangements with the creditor to start payments again.
So does it stall it for a while? Or?
It will temporarily stall the foreclosure, but it's for a period of time only.
So in other words, if I can't pay my mortgage, then eventually I'm going to lose the home.
That's correct.
Do you think, are people surprised in your classes to find that out?
I think they are. And I do want to make a comment on the Chapter 13. That's a little bit more promising of a situation. With respect to Chapter 13, the arrearages, the delinquencies of the mortgage will actually be included in the repayment plan under the reorganization. And then in addition to that, the individual will be liable for making payments and keeping those current on the existing mortgage. So there's a little bit more of a chance of keeping the property long-term in a Chapter 13 if you're able to make your trustee plan under the reorganization as well as keeping your mortgage payment current.
Or unless, and then I guess if I'm in a Chapter 7, if my other debts are discharged and maybe that's what's keeping me from paying the mortgage, I might be able, I guess, to move the money around.
Possibly, yes.
What else can I try to keep in a bankruptcy?
Well, the state of Nevada does provide exemptions, and they do identify the different types of assets that individuals own, such as a vehicle. A vehicle is allotted $15,000 in an exemption, and if you're married, you're actually allotted $30,000. You can stack those, or you can do it on 2 different vehicles. With respect to your home, you are allotted up to $550,000 in an exemption, but obviously with the current market, that hasn't been too much of an issue. Clothing, you're allowed to keep whatever is considered reasonable. In other words, they don't want you keeping mink coats or Rolex watches or Gucci purses, that kind of thing. With respect to household goods, furnishings, electronics, appliances, up to $12,000.
Okay, let me go back for a second. You said on the house you're given $550,000 as an exemption. So does that mean if I owe, what does that really mean?
It means if your property, hypothetically, if your property was worth $800,000, you owed, let's say you owed $600,000.
Okay.
If the trustee comes in and he sells the property for $700,000, that means that you would be given $550,000 credit towards what you owe on that property, and then the deficiency would be $50,000.
Okay, so you can maybe with that exemption, I guess comes into play in terms of what that would mean, whether you'd have to sell your home or not.
That's correct.
Okay. In terms of, you're saying clothes you can keep or not keep, electronics, what if, some people are saying they're getting advice that says, well, give your mother the car, give your in-laws some of your stuff.
You have to be very, very careful about that because in bankruptcy, a court-appointed officer called a trustee is engaging in your bankruptcy estate. He's reviewing all of your assets, what you currently own and what you've owned sometimes the previous year. And if they find that there's been any transfer of assets or selling of assets, they will look at it very closely.
Okay.
And they will reverse the transaction if they deem that it was done under fraudulent conduct.
Okay, so they're putting you on notice that you've got to tell them what you actually owe, right?
What you actually own, that's correct. And if you've sold any items in the previous 6 months or a year, it depends on who you might have transferred that property to. If it was to a family member or business associate or a friend, they will look back 1 year prior. If it was truly a sale, then they will to an innocent party, then it would be 6 months they'll look back.
Okay. Now, if I'm a consumer and I'm thinking about filing bankruptcy, what is the best way to educate myself?
Well, we offer the bankruptcy community outreach class at our offices, and that is offered twice a week. On Wednesday night, it's actually offered from 6 to 8 at the law school, and then at our offices from 2:30 to 4:30 on Friday afternoons.
Right, and I can vouch for that class, having taken it. You get a really nice big workbook that walks you through some of the steps, so we'll give you the number in just a second. But coming up later in our program, we're going to give you some insight into some deals for locals.